Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Halo Chronicle. Today's episode is the first part in the finale of the First Strike series. This series will conclude with next week's episode. Last time, the Master Chief would lead a daring rescue on Planet Reach. He and a small crew would search the planet for survivors following the fall of Reach. They would find Admiral Whitcomb and a small group of Spartans. They would then learn that the remnants of Red Team were cornered by the Covenant in a nearby cave system under Manakite Mountain. Using a dropship to get in close, the Master Chief's team would begin engaging the Covenant forces. They would clear out sections of the cave and make contact with Red Team led by Fred. The two groups would meet up. The Master Chief would be surprised to see that Dr. Halsey managed to survive the Covenant's assault. Together they would make their way out of Manakite Mountain. The Covenant forces that were sent to engage Red Team were reluctant, as they had strict orders to preserve the crystal that Dr. Halsey had recovered in the same cave system. This gave the Chief's team an opening to easily cut through the Covenant forces. The Spartans would enter a gallery that was completely filled with Covenant forces. The reluctance of the Covenant allowed Pulaski to bring a dropship into the cave and perform a daring rescue. The Covenant tried to repel the dropship back into the cave with a reverse gravity lift, but Dr. Halsey's crystal would change shape and begin releasing radiation. This radiation would disable the reverse gravity lift and allow the ship to climb out of the cave. In orbit, Cortana would use Covenant engineers to merge the Ascendant Justice with a UNSC ship called the Gettysburg. The combined ship had access to two reactor systems and thus had the capability to perform two slip-space jumps in quick succession. Cortana would jump to the rendezvous point, pick up the Master Chief's crew, and jump out of the system completely. Dr. Halsey's crystal would again emit radiation and change configurations. The crystal would put the Gettysburg Ascendant Justice into an alternate version of slipspace. It would also pull several Covenant ships into this dimension. Cortana was forced to battle with other ships in this erratic space. During this time, a hidden group of elites on the Gettysburg Ascendant Justice would appear and punch a hole in the ship's hull. The Master Chief, his Spartans, and pilot Pulaski would be forced to attempt to repair the ship while in slipspace. The elites would attack the UNSC crew during this repair and cause an explosion. This explosion would kill Spartans Lee, Anton, and pilot Pulaski. Cortana would then be forced to make a gutsy decision and leave slipspace abruptly. This caused the slipspace bubble that had enveloped the Covenant ships to collapse. The resulting collapse destroyed all of the trailing Covenant ships. It also knocked out all of the Spartans. The crew would recover and regroup on the ship's bridge, where Cortana would bring grave news. The Covenant had found Earth and were amassing a large invasion force to invade and take the planet. They decided they had to do whatever possible to warn Earth, but before they could do that, they would need to make repairs. The Master Chief proposed that they move to the nearby system of Eridanus Secundus. The Chief knew of a rebel base in an asteroid that might be able to help them with repairs. That completes last week's episode. Let's jump into the start of the final chapter of this story. While en route to Eridanus Secundus, Dr. Halsey would get to work on several tasks. Her first task was Spartan Linda. Linda was clinically dead following the battle for Reach and was cryoed in an effort to preserve her body. The Master Chief brought Linda to Dr. Halsey hoping that there was a way to restore her. Using the medical facilities on the Gettysburg, Dr. Halsey performed several surgeries on Linda. She flash cloned several organs and transplanted them into Linda. She also had to create several skin grafts. After a lengthy operation, Dr. Halsey was able to save Linda. To the astonishment of the entire crew, Linda would then regain consciousness. Dr. Halsey then turned her focus to Cortana. Halsey knew that Cortana was not performing at optimal efficiency. After performing diagnostics, Halsey found that Cortana was using way too much processing power to store data collected from Alpha Halo. She would remove and back up this data. She would then have Cortana use her infiltration software on a tablet that Halsey recovered from Castle Base. This tablet belonged to Colonel Ackerson, who was a political enemy of Halsey. Cortana found references to another Spartan program called Spartan 3, as well as coordinates to a facility on a remote planet. Before Cortana could investigate further, Halsey disabled her and deleted all memory of this exchange from her system. Halsey then turned her attention to Corporal Locklear. Locklear was heartbroken at the loss of Pulaski during their last exchange with the Covenant. Halsey decided that she would give the mysterious slipspace crystal to the ODST. She ordered him to do everything possible to make sure that it didn't fall into Covenant hands. Locklear wasn't sure why he was tasked with this assignment, but he accepted it nonetheless. The Gettysburg Ascendant Justice would arrive in Eridanus Secundus. The Master Chief would supply directions to the hidden asteroid base. As they approached, several human-controlled ships would surround the alien vessel. Cortana would then detect the presence of nuclear devices. Whitcomb would take charge and attempted to reach out to the rebels. Whitcomb would make contact with the leader of the rebels named Governor Giles. After a brief standoff with the rebels, Whitcomb would convince the rebels to assist him with some repairs. While working on repairs at the rebel asteroid base, Halsey would find a UNSC Condor vessel. This vessel was the smallest UNSC spacecraft that contained a slipspace drive, but the drive could not be activated without a special code. This code was only known by ONI personnel, including Dr. Halsey. Dr. Halsey would then call for Spartan Kelly to come to the medical bay for some tests. During these tests, Dr. Halsey would sedate Kelly. Locklear would become very resentful of the crystal he was carrying. He believed that the crystal created the situation that resulted in the death of Pulaski. Locklear decided to destroy the crystal. He would take some C7 explosive gel and coat the crystal with it. He would then place it in an unoccupied compartment of the ship. Locklear then detonated the gel. The resulting explosion was far bigger than Locklear expected, and the ODST would be killed in the blast. Using the explosion as a distraction, Halsey loaded Kelly into the Condor and fled the base. She then activated its slipspace drive using her ONI codes. In a flash, both Kelly and Halsey were gone. This would aggravate the base's commander, Governor Giles, as the Condor was his personal spacecraft. Before things could escalate between the UNSC forces and the insurrectionists, Cortana would detect the arrival of a fleet of Covenant ships. Knowing that neither they nor the rebels had enough firepower to take on this fleet, Whitcomb gave the order to Cortana to jump them out of the system. This regrettably left the rebels to fight the Covenant alone. After jumping in the slipspace, the crew would find that they were in normal slipspace. Locklear was ultimately successful in destroying the mysterious slipspace crystal. Several shards of the crystal were recovered, but none of them contained the mysterious properties it once had. Cortana would receive some more Covenant transmissions. Through these transmissions, she was able to confirm the name and the location of the refueling platform where the Covenant invasion forces were amassing. This platform would be called the Unyielding Hierophant. It would be the last stop for the Covenant before they would head to Earth. Knowing that the UNSC forces were significantly depleted following the fall of Reach, the Master Chief knew if they did not stop this invasion before they left for Earth, it would likely fall to the Covenant. The Master Chief proposed an operation to engage the Covenant forces. This operation would be called First Strike. Operation First Strike would call for the Master Chief and his remaining Spartan forces to use a Covenant dropship to infiltrate the Unyielding Hierophant. Using guidance provided by Cortana, they would then move through the facility to its reactor and overload it. The reactor would then go critical and detonate, destroying all of the nearby Covenant ships and buying Earth a significant amount of time to mount a proper defense. Admiral Whitcomb had two major reservations to the Master Chief's plan. The first was that he could not risk bringing the Gettysburg Ascendant Justice into the system that housed the Unyielding Hierophant. Getting a warning to Earth was the top priority, and entering that system would jeopardize this task. The second issue is that he could not afford to give up Cortana, as she was the only one who could pilot the ship. Fortunately, Cortana had a solution for both issues. When Cortana destroyed the Covenant AI, she acquired some programming that would allow her to copy herself. This copy would not be stable or complete, but it could give the Master Chief the direction he needed. The second solution would be for Cortana to drop the Covenant dropship out of slipspace directly into the correct system. She believed with the advanced slipspace control she had with the Covenant ship that she could time it just right and drop the dropship into normal space without the Gettysburg Ascendant Justice having to do the same. With all the reasons for his reservations resolved, Whitcomb would approve Operation First Strike. The Master Chief, Fred, Linda, Grace, and Will would take on this desperate operation. We will go further into this battle in next week's episode. Please stay tuned. Before we wrap up today's video, let's talk about some interesting bits of lore tied to today's video. When Linda was revived by Dr. Halsey, she was ordered to remain in bed for at least 1 week. Linda ignored this order and would return to duty immediately, even though she was clinically dead for weeks. She would then join the Master Chief on Operation First Strike and perform one of the most badass feats in the history of the Halo universe, but more on that next time. Dr. Halsey's discovery of the Spartan 3 program intrigued her so much that she literally kidnapped Kelly and stole a rebel ship so she could go find them. Little did Halsey know it at the time, but the Spartan 3 facility was actually stationed on a Forerunner shield world called Onyx. The Spartan 3s were also trained by a Spartan 2 that was thought to be KIA named Kurt. The Master Chief knew about the Rebel asteroid base through his first mission after his augmentation surgeries. He commanded a small group of Spartans as they infiltrated the base to capture a Rebel leader named Colonel Robert Watts. The mission was a success and proved the Spartans were ready for their Mjolnir armor. Thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to be notified about future videos. Next week's video will cover the entirety of Operation First Strike and the aftermath. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next time.